All right, hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Todd. This is the final session of the day of the conference, the Developer's Guide to Selling Your Work. We've had 2 amazing days of talks from all kinds of folks about how to build and design software better. And I get to close this out by talking about what comes next, how to actually sell that work, how to sell your products, how to sell your content, or how to sell yourself. Over the last 10 years or so of my career, I've stumbled on that a lot, going through a number of different phases of my own career, learning how to talk about myself without sounding too scummy, I guess, and how to succeed at what I was doing. And what this talk is about, sharing those lessons that I've learned personally with all of you. And why is this important? This is important because whether you realize it or not, every one of you are building a product today. It might have an idea that you want to build your own software product and sell it someday, or you want to launch a blog, or you want to launch a training company, a consulting company, or maybe you just want to get that next promotion in your career. Regardless of what you're doing, we're all building something. And I had a fallacy that I believed when I first started building things, is that I believed the great products sold themselves. And there's so many examples in history where this is just clearly not true. This is very, very wrong, and so many developers believe this. You can have the most brilliant technology, the best written, the most well-written blog, or the best training site, but if you don't talk about it, if you don't share it, if you don't promote it to your peers, it's never going to go anywhere. And so that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to share today 3 stories about me, about what I learned about promoting myself in each phase of my career. It could also be a story about how the hair migrated from the top of my head to the bottom of my head. But the first story is a story about Todd the consultant. So a number of years ago, I worked for a company that was like Big Corp. Who works for Big Corp? It looked like this. And it's not so much the cubicles themselves that are really bad. It's everything that they represent. It's that yearly performance review. It's advancement only means going into management. It's doing the same project over and over and over again with slightly different names. And so I decided to get out of Big Corp and start my own consulting company. I went and became a freelancer. And so I went out and I got a bunch of stock photos of important-looking people shaking hands and in meetings. And then I thought, now that I have that out of the way, how do I find some clients? How do I find people who are actually willing to pay me to help them write software? And so I started speaking professionally. I would come to user groups, come to conferences, and talk about the things that I know or the things that I thought that I knew, and try to convince people that I was an expert. I clearly was not. This is a video. This is a still from a video from one of my very first talks at a conference called Twin City Code Camp. And in this talk, I looked down at my laptop, barely making eye contact, for 90 minutes doing code. And it was awful. It was terrible. If you're really interested in how terrible it was, it's out on YouTube somewhere, and they refused to take it down. When I first started speaking, I was in fact so nervous that I would carry around a flask of bourbon with me. And I would, take a couple pulls off of it maybe 15, 20 minutes before a talk. Here in Poland, that's probably not even a big deal. Like, half of you probably have a flask of bourbon in your pocket right now. Or you've been drinking all day, I'm not sure. But for me, that was a big deal. And to get over that hook, that ledge, to become comfortable on stage, that was an important factor early on. The great thing about going and starting speaking is that it builds. You can start it today. You're here at a conference interacting with a bunch of other awesome people. And once you're willing to first brave and get up on stage at your local user group, you'll become more comfortable. You'll learn that you're not going to die when you come up on stage. You'll learn some skills about how to become more comfortable up here. And once you've done it a few times, that will build, and going to a local user group will get you an invite to a local conference. We'll get you an invite to a regional conference, and up and up and up until you're able to be here at DevConf up on stage. And the great thing about this is there's feedback loops of once you start doing this, you can get back into earlier phases. You can leverage a talk here to do other conferences. If you're willing to do this, I have one piece of really important advice about going to conferences. Always go to the after party and always stay for one more drink. All of the best connections I've ever made from a conference have happened not at the conference itself, but at the after parties, in the hallway tracks. This is when we tear down all of our weird social boundaries and we actually have conversations about what people are liking, what people are scared about, and potential partnerships that we could have. Why does all this matter? Many of you are probably thinking that speaking up on stage is probably one of the most scary things you could possibly imagine. And it can be. And so I want to prove to you why this is important. Either right now or in the future, you are all going to go off and build something. And when you do that, you're going to need to sell it. And selling it to your friends is easier to selling it to strangers. Right now, we are all becoming friends. I've hung out with many of you. You're all seeing me. We're gonna chat on Twitter. We're gonna interact. And when I go off and do something, you're gonna recognize me. You're gonna be like, oh, I saw Todd. He did this thing. I'm gonna retweet him, or I'm gonna share him at my company, share his product at my company. And the same vice versa. I'm gonna see you go off and launch your blog or launch your new training course, and I'll be like, oh yeah, we went out drinking in Poland. That guy's awesome. Let's support that. Or I ran into that lady in the hallway and she had these awesome thoughts about big data, and I would support that. Selling to your friends is going to help you because we want our friends to succeed and we forgive their mistakes. So because we're friends, let me help you. If you're looking to get into public speaking, send me your talk idea. I'm happy to read it over, review it, propose some conferences that I like that you should submit it to. And I'm serious about this. If you're on the edge, take a picture of this. Send me your idea, and I'm happy to do this for you. I'll wait a few seconds here for those who are interested to actually take that picture. I think I've received 3 emails for this offer ever. So I'm serious. I will help if this is something you are interested in doing. And it can do nothing but benefit your career. That's the first story. My second story is about Todd, the entrepreneur. So I'd been a freelance consultant for a few years, mainly doing JavaScript work. And what I was seeing is that JavaScript breaks over and over and over again. And for every client I worked at, we would have to build a way to track when was it breaking. And after building these kind of tools for at least 3 or 4 of my clients, finally beat into my head that, hey, we should just build one service that captures errors for everybody. We just drop it in. And so myself and 2 other developers that I knew really well and I trusted, we started a company called TrackJS, which does JavaScript error monitoring and would drop into all of our clients. And so we built this thing nights and weekends. We didn't quit our jobs. We, went to the local bar and we were sitting there hacking and drinking our beers several nights a week. And over the course of 6 months, we built a working version of the product. And it was great. We were super excited. I had the fallacy that a great product would sell itself still. And so we keep building features, and then we're wondering why nobody is signing up, why nobody is going to our website. Because we weren't talking about it. We didn't spend any time actually promoting the product at this phase. And so what I started to realize was that in order for me to succeed as a developer of this thing that I felt really passionately about, my job to make it succeed wasn't to code anymore. My job was to do all of the other things that software businesses have to do. I had to be a marketer and a salesman and an evangelist, whatever that means, and support the customers that we already had. And these are all really uncomfortable things that I didn't know how to do, but we didn't have anybody doing them. And building one more feature wasn't helping the situation. And so I threw myself into this world to try and be successful there. So the first thing I needed to answer was who was TrackJS going to be? I'd already had some success with conferences where I'd come out and I'd talk about me and what I would do, but now I needed to talk about a company. And I needed to pretend that company was more than just me, because nobody wants to work or work with a piece of software that thinks it's just that guy. It's just his thing. And he runs it in his basement, and it's not real. I had to create a brand around TrackJS to make it appear real. And so I looked out to figure out who are the good voices in this marketing world that didn't say, really douchey-sounding words like brand to figure out what did I want to call TrackJS. And I found this character. This is Fake Grimlock, and he is out on Twitter. And Fake Grimlock pretends to be, or maybe really is, a giant robot dinosaur from outer space that wants to help your startup succeed. And he has a hilarious set of graphics and all kinds of important wisdom. I highly encourage you to check him out at Fake Grimlock on Twitter. But one particular quote that stuck with me and we used as a foundation for figuring out what TrackJS should be is this. And I want to read it for you. I'm going to try and channel Fake Grimlock here today in what I hear in my head when I read Fake Grimlock. Most important step for build product is build product. Second most important step for build product is build personality. No have personality, product boring, no one wants. Bacon has personality, bread does not. When you're building your product, define your product and think of this. How do you make your product more like bacon? Defining your minimum viable personality, Fake Grimlock has a couple of ideas of answering these three basic questions as a starting point. First, how do you want to change the world? Second, what do you stand for? And third, what do you hate? And the third one is kind of sticky for people because it's kind of negative. But you can't really be for anything unless you're against something. And so we use this as a foundation to figure out, all right, who is TrackJS going to be? What is the personality of our company? And so here's how we answer those questions. How do we want to change the world? We wanted to build a better web. We saw too many crappy websites with broken JavaScript on them, and we wanted to create tools and tutorials and information so that people could fix their websites and not have so much broken crap on the web. What do we stand for? What did we think was important? We wanted a simple UI, simple in code, do the most important things that 80% of the people need to do and do them really, really well. And what do we hate? We hate those broken websites. We hate it when you try and booking an airline flight and you hit the submit button and nothing happens. We hate it when you have to open up your dev tools to clear out an ad that won't close to read that BuzzFeed article. We hate what the web has become in the last 5 years, and we want to make it better. With everything you do in this marketing space, you have to iterate. You're going to be wrong. You're going to get your ideas of who you think your customers are or how your brand is going to work are going to be wrong the first time, and the second time, and the third time, and that's okay. You just learn from it, figuring out what is working, what resonates with people, and what doesn't. Once you know who you are, you need to build an audience. You need to talk to people. And when you want to build an audience, you have to answer, or you have to be aware of something really important, is that we are all most interested in ourselves. And that's okay. We need to build an audience understanding that everybody is most interested in themselves. And so we have to do things for them. So when we're building an audience, first you have to discover who do you want your audience to be? Who are the people that you want to talk to? Saying developers is too broad. There's millions of developers. There's developers in every niche. There's developers in different industries, in different languages, in different layers of the stack. Who do you want to talk to? Who are the people at what phase of their career, in what parts of the world that are going to resonate with what you want to do? Once you know who they are, create things for them, useful things for them, things that they will personally benefit from. So build example templates of what you want to talk about and put it on GitHub. Write blog posts and give them away. Create small training videos and share them, and target the people that you want in your audience. And then, once you know who they are and you have things for them, go talk to them where they are. Participate in the communities that they're already participating in. Participate on their Stack Overflow questions. Join their GitHub repositories. Go to the conferences that they're at. Join the user groups that they're at. An example of that is me doing this right now. So my audience are going to be web developers in spaces peripheral to core JavaScript, so Java, Python, PHP, .NET, People who have to write JavaScript don't always like writing JavaScript. They come to conferences like this one right here, and I'm going to produce a piece of content that I think they're all going to get value from, which is some tips and ideas on how to promote yourself and how to make you all succeed. And now I'm coming here. I'm breaking through the fourth wall of speaking. I'm talking about this talk in this talk. And iterate with that. Figure out what's working and what's not. If you are doing all of these things and still nobody cares about what it is that you do, something is wrong. Either that you're talking to the wrong people, or you're not going to where they really are, or you're building something that isn't all that valuable for them. Once you know who you are and you're talking to a group of people, you're going to need to probably build a web page. In our industry, that's probably the most accurate reflection of your brand, of your personality. And so by page design, I don't mean like the CSS layout and the grid and all of that stuff. I mean, how do you build a web page that is actually going to convert your audience into customers? And so when I think about building a page, here's a couple of things of rules that I keep. First, every page should target an explicit audience. Too many web pages are for everybody. They're trying to be everything to everybody. They have messages for current customers, messages for prospective customers, messages for support, messages for investors, messages for media. They have too much. They're trying to do too much for too many people. And so you get lost. Once you know who your audience is, you should have a goal of what do you want them to do if they visit your page? How do you want to convert them from being interested in you to actually giving you some money? So I want to show you an example of how I put these into practice with our website. So our prospective audience are, as I said, web developers. And my web developers will come to this page, and what do you think I want them to do? I want them to start my free trial. That is the goal of this page. Everything on this page is meant to try and get you to click on that button. That's what I want you to do. In order to do that, I try and show some general information about who my audience is. I show three developers looking at a screen all scared, like, oh my God, how has this happened in production? This is a piece of stock photo, but I do want to show off my photoshopping skills because before they were developers and I made them JavaScript developers. I photoshopped in that sticker, and I can prove it because if you go to a slightly different version of our webpage for a different audience, now they are Angular developers. All right, so this page is designed around getting them to go to do this. And so I do that by a couple of different ways. So first, I have just a general headline of what is the problem that I think you're trying to solve. And then I show people some information about, here's what our app does. Here's what we could do for you. Make it about them. Don't talk about what features you have. Talk about how they can be better for it. So here's some things on that. We show some specific information about our application. And then a lot of people, that's not good enough. And you need social proof. You need to show that, hey, I'm not just a fly-by-night operation. And so you point at other people who use you. And that's really effective. And so we do that. And then here at the bottom, I have a counter of all of the different errors that we've tracked. But I do know that my audience are developers. And developers are going to look at that, and they're going to be like, Todd, that's bullshit. There's no way that you're figuring that out all the time, and I'm going to prove it. So they pop open their dev console, and they go and click on it to say, Todd, how are you doing that? I'm going to expose you on Twitter, and they find this. They find this message here that I left for them. It says, hey there, developers, I'm sure you understand it wouldn't be performant for us to get this number every time. If you'd really like it, send us an email. And so in this way, I've made the markup of our page part of the purpose of our page, because I know that my audience are the developers, and the developers are going to do this. And this is really effective. I get maybe an email every 2 weeks of somebody emailing me like this that says, I don't even care what the number is. That was just awesome. So that's an example of how we put those principles to use on our own web page. And again, iterate. You're going to get it wrong. It's going to miss the mark the first time. It's going to miss the mark several times. Keep changing it until you find something that works. And it's okay to be wrong. But I do have to offer this advice to developers specifically, is please do not overdo it. You do not need to write your own blog software to start your own blog. You do not need to have the fastest, most well-structured website on the planet to launch a product. You do not need to spend all of the time making sure everything delivers as fast as possible with HTTP2 and maximized compression. Just get a website that works. And the most important question to answer is, are you talking to the right people and are you telling them the right things? Not with how your website is actually built. So now I want to move to my third story. This is the story of Todd the producer. So through a number of my relationships with conferences, I started to see a need for like a space for speakers after the conference, where the speakers could get together and show off their skills, tell jokes, just entertain people at the bar. A place for everybody to come together and kind of just relax. And so this is a story of a thing called Pubcom. So Pubcom is this emphasis that all of the best experiences I've had at conferences have come from the hallway track. The best relationships develop when we let our guard down. And in a way, Pubcom and that idea is an extension of what we wanted to do with the TrackJS brand itself. Many really great companies start their own conferences. Microsoft has Build, Twilio has Signal, TrackJS have Pubcom. And I feel good about that. So Pubcom is a lot of fun. And I used all of the same tools and techniques I've already talked about to build up and represent Pubcom as its own brand. It's got a personality that I've talked about, a target audience, pages that are designed to do something to convince my core audience of developer conference attendees to buy a ticket and come and hang out. But now I want to talk about the actual mechanics of marketing that page and how I'm able to know whether or not those pages are successful. We're going to talk about marketing words here for a minute. And it might be a little scary, but it's okay. We're going to go real slow. We're going to talk about the funnel. How many of you have heard about the funnel? Heard it thrown around in conversations at work, and nobody not quite sure what it means, and the people who said it don't know what it means, and it's just this abstract idea. The funnel is a part of your architecture. It is the architecture for how you convert leads into customers. Whether or not you've ever thought about it as an architecture, it is that. It is all of the steps that you are currently asking your customers today to take in order to give you money. And if you don't think about it, you're probably asking them to make a lot of decisions and do a lot of things that you don't always understand and might not be good. And you might be losing way more customers than you think you are. That funnel is made up of a number of different goals. For most of us, that funnel is going to start with a landing page. Is where do you want the user to go if they're interested in your product and what you want to do? If you're just promoting yourself, it'll be like your LinkedIn profile or your Stack Overflow profile or your personal resume page. Once they land there, you are asking them to go through one or more steps before they become a customer. Maybe you want them to look at a particular subset of your pages or sign up for a mailing list or download a copy of your resume, or sign up for a free trial. Here is the funnel as I see it for Pubcom. Pubcom has a number of different events all around the world, and it's pretty unlikely for somebody who comes to a Pubcom in London to also come to a Pubcom in Kansas City, other than maybe Jimmy Bogart. So it starts with an event page. Is when somebody lands on a particular page for, say, Pubcom London, that's where it starts. And then what I want them to do is I want them to look at who is speaking at Pubcom London, because that's the point where a lot of people will click. And when they see speakers that they respect and admire, but they're talking about terrible, stupid things, they clicks for them and they realize that this is a joke, and this is going to be comedy, and this is going to be a good time. And then they go on and they'll view how much does it cost to get a ticket. And then hopefully they buy a ticket. This is the funnel as I see it for buying a ticket to Pubcom. So how do you know, as you build your funnel, if any of it works? How do I know that I have the right steps in the right order? If we keep our analogy that this is a software system, how do we know that any of our software systems work? We write test suites. And so analytics is the test suite for your funnel. And the problem with analytics is that a lot of people overdo it. And they try and measure every single thing about everything that ever happens, and they end up with a sea of data that they can't make heads or tails of. Analytics enable you to write tests for the specific parts of your funnel that you think exists. And you can check whether or not they're working. This is usually implemented as like a JavaScript event tracker. You drop it in from like a Google Analytics or a Mixpanel or that sort of thing. And then once you have that, you can start writing tests about your funnel. So for example, whether or not somebody looks at this particular part of your page, or how often somebody goes from the main page to your resume page, or how often somebody looks at the schedule of your upcoming courses, or whatever it is that's unique for your product that you're building. The feedback on this, unlike other kinds of tests, is going to be slow. With many software tests, you click a button, and then milliseconds to seconds to minutes later, you have a response on whether or not things work. Testing your funnel with analytics is going to take days, is going to take weeks, and so it will require some patience. When you do get your results, they're not going to be pass-fail. They're going to look like this. And you don't necessarily know what that means. Is that good? Is that bad? Like what? It's up to you to interpret that and say, do I feel like 172 sessions is a good turnout for this particular amount of time? So I want to show you some more real data, a real example from Pubcom. So here was Pubcom's funnel, as I shared before. Event page, to view speakers, to view tickets, to buy tickets. And here's some real data for a period of time. So we had 1,000 people come in and look at the event page. And of that, 196 looked at the speakers, 140 viewed tickets, and 118 bought tickets. Bringing that out to percentages, we see here's the basic conversion rate between each step of this process. All in all, it ends up with 11.81%. So 11% of my 1,000 people fell out the bottom. But it's up to me to decide whether or not that's good. So I interpret that as I like that 71 and that 84%. I think those are passing tests. Those are good parts of my funnel that work well. But there's something missing for me. Something in that event page to view speakers, there's not a lot of people that make that jump. And so I need to do something with those pages to try and improve that. I don't know what that is yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. But this is data from our actual analytics. So let's bring it back up to the high-level funnel itself. So we get leads in the top, and some percentage of them convert to become customers and give us some money. And if we can figure out how much it's going to cost us to put a new lead in the top of the funnel, and if we can figure out how likely it is that they fall through, and how much it is worth to us to get a customer out the bottom, we could turn our funnel into a piece of software that just prints money for us. We could put $1 in the top and get $3 out the bottom. And so let's figure out how could we go about doing that. So what does it cost us to get a lead? In the most common way, this is advertising. Is advertising on Google, advertising on Facebook or Twitter, advertising on display ads, blogs, whatever. And typically the way that you pay for that is in the term cost per click, is I'll pay somebody a certain amount of money for every time they click on my ad. And so with Pubcom, I use a lot of Twitter. Twitter has some pretty powerful targeting mechanisms that let me, when I'm going to do a Pubcom in London, I can saturate the developer market in London with my ads, and I take pictures of my speakers, and I build silly ads to run on Twitter with photos from my speakers. And I could use this data that I get out of the Twitter advertising platform to put speakers against each other. Like, I could make fun of Damien and say that nobody clicked on his ad. Literally nobody clicked on it. But 126 people clicked on Lindsay's ad, so clearly she's more popular. But that's ultimately not that important to me. What's important to me is this roll-up number here, is that for this campaign, it cost me $1.17 for a click. And so I can bring that into my funnel and say, all right, I pay $1.17 to put a new lead into my funnel. And then, as we saw earlier, the conversion rate of my funnel right now is 11.81%. I wish it was better. I wish I need to improve that particular step to make it more likely that people look at my speakers. But right now, it's 11.81. And so if I do some simple math here, I can figure out that it costs me about $10 to acquire a new customer. If I pay $1.17 and 11% of those $1.17s actually turn out, it costs me about $10 to acquire a new customer for that funnel, through that funnel. I could make it that less if I improve my architecture. If I could make that 15%, it would cost me less to acquire a customer. So whether or not that's worth it depends on what a customer is worth it to us. So if you're paying $10 to acquire a customer and then you're only selling your product for $5, that's not so good for you, is it? You have to figure out what a customer is actually worth to you. And so a customer isn't just worth the purchase price or what they give you explicitly in a single transaction. You have to figure out what is the lifetime value of a customer. And that's going to depend a lot on what market you're in and what kind of thing you're doing. For Pubcom is an event. It's an event that repeats every year in the same city, and we sell a ticket to Pubcom for about $30. Based on our historical numbers, there's about a 50% return rate, which means if you bought a Pubcom ticket to Pubcom London last year, half of those people will try and buy a ticket to Pubcom London next year. I don't have to do anything. I just email them when tickets are available, and they're going to buy a ticket. And so what that means to me is that the lifetime value of acquiring a customer with an ad is $45. They're going to give me $30 this year, and there's a 50% chance they're going to give me $30 next year. And so I can think of that as in there's a longer time horizon, but I can make more from this customer because they are going to stick with me once they're in. As a general rule of thumb, the cost to acquire the customer needs to be a third or less of the value of that customer. And so think about that. If you sell a product for $10, or if it costs you $10 to acquire a customer, you need to make at least $30 off of them. If you don't have enough money to, one, deliver the service that you're giving them, and two, you don't make any money yourself to pay your mortgage and buy food and beer. So you have to have enough overhead in the amount of money that you're actually going to make advertising worthwhile. But if we put all of these numbers together, we're going to spend $1.17 in to pay $10 to acquire a customer right now, and I get $45 of value for every customer that comes through this path. Put another way is that Pubcom is a machine that lets me put $10 in front end and take out $45 worth of beer. And that's fantastic. I've created this mechanism where in London, I could put $100 down and get $450 worth of beer. And that's awesome. Those were 3 different things that I've done and some things I learned about promoting as part of it. So I told you 3 stories today. First, the goal when I started my own consultancy, the thing I really learned is how powerful professional speaking can be. I highly encourage you to look into this. I know it's scary, but if I could say one thing that was completely transformative to my own success, that was it. Second, when you build a company, when you're actually starting to do something beyond just being an individual developer, you need to build up your audience. Who do you want to talk to, and what do you want to give to them? You're not going to be really successful until you know who they are. And third, once you actually start having money involved, you need to measure whether or not you're being effective. The people coming to your website, are they doing the right things in order to turn them from people who like you into people who are willing to give you some money? This was the Developer's Guide to Promoting Themselves. I'm Todd Gardner. Here's a picture that somebody took of all the different things in this talk. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for letting me come to Poland. Cheers.